It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video. And today I'm going to do an update on RocketChat, and on top of doing the update on just the user interface and things, I'm also going to do a portion, so it'll probably be a separate video, but we'll see how far we get with this and how long this video takes. But it'll also be to integrate RocketChat using LDAP and the free IPA stuff that we've done in the past. So kind of keep an eye out for that. But I kind of don't want to mix things because I know some people come here just to see how to install RocketChat and how to get it up and running. And then some people might be more interested in, okay, now how do I integrate this with my current LDAP setup or my free IPA setup, things like that, for my business or my university or my company or my group of family members that all share my network somehow. So I'll kind of go into this in two different phases, and we'll see if both phases fit in one video or if I'm going to split that out into two different videos. But I'm going to guess now that it's probably two videos. Before I get going, I want to say thank you so much to my patrons over at Patreon. I truly appreciate all of the support that you guys give me. I just can't tell you enough how much it means to me that you support me the way that you do. And I just want to say thank you so much. It really means a lot. Also, thank you to the subscribers on YouTube. I appreciate you guys subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Tick the little bell so you get notifications when I put out new videos. I try to put out new videos every week. When I do series, sometimes I put them out a little bit more frequently so you're not waiting quite so long in between videos. And then also tell your friends about this. You know, let them know about open source software. Let them know about self-hosting. Let them know what's going on in the world with this kind of stuff. It's really great, and they can come along on the journey with us. And then finally, if you think I did a good job on this video at the end of it, please give it a thumbs up. That tells YouTube that I'm doing a good job, and it helps things work out better with their algorithms with making my content more presentable to other people. So I appreciate you doing that for me. Now let's get on with the install. So if you go to rocket.chat, this is kind of the first page we'll start at. This is what their page looks like. So I missed their old page, the original page that I found. It was really just kind of a way to get into their system. It wasn't laid out like this, but it had some cool kind of webbing in the background. As you moved your mouse around, the webbing basically tried to avoid your mouse, which is kind of awesome. I kind of missed that, honestly, but they've got a lot of information up here. Now, when you see open source software, and I try to say this on all my videos where you see this, you see pricing, and you're like, well, that's not free. Well, okay. No, I mean, nothing's free in the world. Everything takes effort, everything takes time, everything takes somebody putting in something to get more into the product. So when you look at these things that are open source products that are really making it and really getting a lot of traction in the world, they have to come up with some way to sustain that development. So if you want to run your community edition on your own like we're going to do, you can do that, and it's free. It's right here. You can see it. But if you say, you know what, I'd like some extra features, things like that, then here you go. It's $3 for, you know, for doing that. If you need enterprise, you can contact them and tell them what you're looking for and what kind of support you want, things like that, and they can give you some pricing on that. I'll tell you now, this is probably less expensive than running Slack, and you get almost all of the features that you get from Slack. I mean, Slack has a lot of stuff. Don't misunderstand me. Slack's great, but Slack is closed source. Slack is absolutely 100% controlled by the Slack people, not, hey, we'll install it on your servers and you can run it for yourself. You know, so just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at these things, and know that RocketChat is constantly being developed, but keep that in mind. So I know pricing always jumps out at people. I wanted to touch on that now. But if you go to the blog, they have information about RocketChat. They have community where you can actually go and actually join RocketChat, or you can actually jump over to get some help with RocketChat installs and questions and things like that. So, and they use their own software, so you know, even better, right? They're not using some other software on top of, you know, and not using RocketChat for a lot of what they do, which I think is great. You know, contact information, if you want to contact them, you can. So I think there's really just a ton of stuff here on their main page, so it's worth showing you guys that and letting you see it. But what we want to do is install RocketChat, and if you go out to their docs, so if you click on the docs here, you'll see Welcome to RocketChat, and there's just tons and tons and tons of information in their documentation that is absolutely worth you going and checking out. I've already got the link open that we want today, so we're going to talk about installing RocketChat with Docker, because as you know, I install lots of stuff in Docker, and I kind of want to explain why. So I'm going to show you real quick what it looks like. This is my home lab setup. So this is what I'm running on a single laptop. That laptop has 12 gigs of RAM. It's a Core i5 2nd gen processor. I mean, it is not like a server class machine. And I'm running all this stuff on that laptop right now. So you can see everything that's running. I've got NGinX Proxy Manager. I've got Nextcloud running. I've got Cloud Beaver, so the actual database thing that I showed in a few videos back is running. I've got Cut for URL shortening running. I've also got, let's see, Chow, which I'm going to do a video on later, is running. I've got, let's see, Remotely. So Remotely is remote assistant software that you can use like TeamViewer, but it's free and open source. It's a really awesome program. So I've got that running as well here on my home lab. Monitor, which I've shown in the past, which is Monitor and Chow kind of do the same thing, but Chow gives you some notifications through email whenever things happen. So I've got both of those running. I've got Metabase running, which I use constantly. My wife uses this all the time, and it's a really great way to do analytics on database information and database tables. It's just a really superb product, by the way. I've done videos on it in the past. I may do a follow-up on it as well. Got Portainer, which is what we're using to look at all this stuff. I've got Matomo, which is what I use for the actual analytics for my website. And then we've got Apache, which is my music server, and then again the NGinX Proxy Manager database. So I've got all of these things running, and now I'm going to add RocketChat on top of that. And I want to kind of show you what that looks like from a resources perspective, because I fear that people see these videos and they go, okay, well, I mean, I have to install Docker and I have to install that thing, and it's just a pain. The reason you install Docker is that once you've got it, now you can install a whole lot of things on top of it and run those things. So if you're used to the old way of running servers where you might run like virtual machines and you might create a virtual server with a full Ubuntu install or a full Fedora install or a full Red Hat install or CentOS or whatever makes you happy, then you install the application on top of that server that you want to run. And then you say, okay, well, now I want to run a different application, but I need this other kind of server. So you go and create another virtual machine, and now you go install that server. And suddenly you're using up a lot of disk space and a lot of resources to run these virtual machines. And Docker kind of does that same thing, but it does it in a very minimized way so that it's not so much. So I'm going to show you a pretty cool look at this thing. So the command is neo fetch, which this is an application you can get and install in your different browsers, and you can see. So I'm running this machine, and it's Zorin OS 15.3, which is essentially Ubuntu 18.04, and it's an x86 64 machine. It's a Latitude, so you can see what this machine is. It's kernel 5.4. It's been up for 11 days, 9 hours, and 37 minutes since I had to reboot it for an update recently. I've got 2,312 packages. Bash 4.4.20, so it tells you all of the information. So here it is. It's an Intel i5 2nd gen 3.2 gigahertz, and it's got I'm using 6.5 gigs of the 11 gigs or almost 12 gigs available. So I'm only using about half, a little over half the RAM that's available on the system, and it's running great. I mean, this is what the system is doing. So this is what we get when we actually try to run these things. So I'm just going to clear this out. And we're going to go back over to the RocketChat container stuff. And as you go down, you'll kind of, if you scroll down on the screen, and again, I'll put all these links in the show notes and in the description so you guys can get to them on your own. But my show notes, I always have much more detailed information, and I have actual commands that I put in and things like that, step by step for you. So I suggest checking out the show notes if you're really wanting to do this and you're not wanting to have to stop and pause the video and switch screens and all that kind of stuff. But feel free to follow along the video too. And I'll put this link in the show notes as well. So we've got Docker Compose here. And if you look right here, you're going to see that they have this example. And this is what I took. Now I modified it a little bit, so I'll show you what I've got. And again, on my show notes, I'll put the entire Docker Compose file that I use. But as you go down, you'll just see kind of the information that they've got here for you on what to do for running Docker Compose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to my terminal, and inside of here I'm just going to do an ls for you real quick. I don't have a RocketChat folder yet, so I'm just going to do mkdir RocketChat. So I'm just going to create a folder to hold what we're doing, and then I'm going to change into that folder. Oops, CD if I spell it right. There we go, RocketChat. Now inside of here, I'm going to create a file. I'm going to do nano docker-compose.yml. Now when I've got this opened up, I've actually got the entire YAML already ready, so I'm going to go grab that and paste it in, and then we'll go through it and I'll kind of explain what everything is doing. Alright, we've got the actual YAML stuff pasted in here, and I really didn't change anything that they have as far as variables except for a port number, and I'll show you that in a minute. But everything else I just left kind of as the default for now, and I'll explain why. So this is going to use the version 2 of Docker Compose. That's what they used. And as you come down, it says we're going to create a service called RocketChat, and we're going to use the image RocketChat and then rocket.chat latest, which is fine. And then it's going to start running some commands. So it wants to run this command, and it creates this loop, and it's basically going to try to do this 30 times. So it's going to run 30 times to try and do this. And if it fails, it's going to tell you, it's going to wait 5 seconds, and then it's going to try again. Once it runs out of 30 tries, it's going to quit, and it'll fail. So at least you'll know it failed. But that's just all this is doing, is it's going to try to start up the system 30 times or get it set up. The next thing it does is it's going to restart unless stopped. So this just says, unless I stop this container, if the machine reboots for some reason, once it reboots and Docker's up and running, restart this container, which is great, because that means when you reboot the system, the container's going to come right back up. You don't have to go start it specifically or anything. Volumes, so it's ./uploads, so we're inside of our RocketChat folder, so it's going to create a volume called uploads inside of that folder, and it's going to map to the container, which is /app/uploads. That's fine. We want that. That's great. The port I leave alone, because this is the port inside of the container itself, so it's going to set it up as port 3000 inside the container. The root URL is going to be localhost 3000 inside of the container. And then the MongoDB URL is going to be mongodb://mongo:27017/RocketChat, which is fine. This is all going to work just fine as far as I can tell from testing. So I just leave it alone. And then the oplog, again, it's going to look at local for the oplog. And then the mail URL. So I leave this. This is just a junk URL. It doesn't help you, but it's because I go and set up my email through the UI, and we'll go through that in a minute when the install is done. As we move down, these are commented out, and I leave them that way. I don't really use the proxy domain stuff. It depends on Mongo, which is down below, so we'll get into the Mongo install here in a minute, but that says these two things need to be linked in a network inside of Docker. Now, in the original file, they have 3000:3000. I changed that because I know that I already have something using port 3000 on my server, so I'm going to change this to be 9201, which is perfectly fine. Just pick a port number that's not being used on your server, and you only want to change the left side. The left side is the host side. You want to make sure that you're setting a port on your host that's not in use. The right side is always the container, and you don't want to use that container side. You don't want to mess with that. Just leave it alone. So next you come to the Mongo section. It's going to install Mongo 4.0. It's going to, again, run unless stopped. It's going to set up a volume for DB, which is data DB. And then it's going to basically map that to data DB out here. So it's inside of our RocketChat folder. So ./datadb is going to map to /data/db in the container, and that's fine. Just leave it as it is. There's no need to change it. This one again is commented out. Just leave it commented out. There's no need to change that either. The command it's going to run is going to start up the MongoD service, which is fine. We don't need to mess with it. Just leave that alone. And then there's a little section here that starts up a MongoDB replica set. So basically Mongo can run as multiple different servers and multiple different instances, and some of them are called replica sets. And basically you have kind of a command instance that says, hey, here I am, and then it spreads all that out to the replica sets, and those replica sets can help spread out the load if you get a lot of load going on inside of MongoDB to help keep things running smoothly. And if one piece fails, those replica sets can take over and handle that business for them until you get those things fixed, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of stuff about replica sets. Again, nothing to change in this section. Just leave it as it is. And down here again, it says it depends on the Mongo section, which was up above it, which is fine. That means all these things are going to be in the network. So once this is all set, again, the only thing I changed is up here, and it's just this port number. That is the only thing that I made a change to, and if you don't need to make that change, you don't have to. You can leave it as 3000. I just have an application already using port 3000, so I changed this port number. Once you make that change, or once you're happy with the way this is all set, hit Control-O to save it, and then Control-X to exit out. And now if we do an ls, we have our docker compose.yaml file. All we have to do now is basically run this docker compose.yaml, and it's going to bring up our RocketChat instance for us. So we're going to say docker-compose up-d, and the D says run this thing as a daemon. So even though this thing runs through what it does, it's going to finish doing what it's doing, and everything's going to run in the background, and I don't have to leave this terminal open. Basically, that's what you want. So when you start the Docker Compose up, you'll see that it's going to pull down the images for everything that we need. So it's pulling down Mongo basically from the Mongo image. Now it's going to pull down RocketChat from the RocketChat image out there on Docker Hub. Alright, so when we're done, we should get something like this, where you have Mongo 1 done, you have the init replica 1, or the RocketChat 1 done, and the init replica 1 done. Now, the thing I notice is, if I go back to my Portainer, I can refresh, and we should see the new containers here. And we do. We have RocketChat, and we have RocketChat Mongo, and then way down here at the bottom you'll see stopped is the replica set. I don't remove it, but if it's stopped, it's not running, so I don't guess it's necessary specifically, but I leave it just in case. So we've got that running. Now we can test and see, is it actually there? So we can go to our IP address for that server, and the port number is 9201, so I'm just going to go by IP first. We're just going to test and see if we get to the RocketChat side. Alright, so we do, and it's going to say, hey, you know, invalid user. I don't know what it was trying to do. Oh, because I had this installed before and I removed it, it was trying to log in with the stuff from Firefox. But we're going to first you're going to come to this wizard, and I found a little weirdness the last time I did it, so we'll see if we hit it, but I'll tell you how to work through it whether we do or not. But just type in your name and then a username that you want and an email, and put in a valid email when you test these things. It's your own system. I mean, who's going to know about it but you? And then we'll go to here and we'll do continue. So what happens is I get this message, I tell it don't save, and it's just going to stay here. It's not going to go anywhere. You can see that Firefox isn't trying to load the page. It's not really doing anything. It just kind of freaks like nothing's happening. And if I go back here, I can't see anything. But if you watch this in the terminal, you can actually see there's like a weird error that you'll eventually get where it says, hey, I couldn't log in with that username or something. It means nothing, but the way you fix this is you go over here in your browser, and either you go to whatever you want to call it, incognito mode or private window in Firefox is what it's called. And now we're just going to go to that same address. And it should bring us to the login screen now. And it does. Now, if you try to log in with your username, it's not going to work. You need to use your email that you put in. That's why I say use a real email and the password that you created. And this should take you to the second part of the wizard now. So here we go. And it brings us to page 2 of the wizard. Now why it won't do that here, I don't know. But if you were to refresh, it would bring you to the login page. But if you tried to log in, it would just tell you that there's an error logging you in, and it's just weird, and I don't know why, but I had to dig around a little bit to find like this solution, but I eventually did, so this is just what I'm suggesting that you try if you run across that same issue. So organization type, I'm just going to say that we're a community. Organization name, I'm going to call this Open Source is Awesome, because it is. And I'm going to call this industry, I don't know, let's call this education, right? We do education. And then, I don't know, there's a bunch of you guys that are my subscribers now, so let's just, about 500 people. Country, and I'm going to just, you know, say worldwide. And then my website, which is https:// and this is ShowNotes.opensourceisawesome.com. We're going to hit continue, and it wants to know the site name, so we'll call this OSIA for Open Source is Awesome. Language, I'm going to set the default language to English because I speak English and I barely speak English, okay? If you speak other languages, I apologize for not being able to set that for you, but hopefully you speak English pretty well, or you can come in and use Google Translate to interact if you want to. We're going to call this a public community, and then auto opt-in for new users for 2-factor via email. So I'm going to say no for now, and I'm going to say continue. Alright, so the next part that you're going to come to is register the server. So this is kind of an important piece, because if you want to be able to do push notifications and things like that, I think RocketChat's going to start charging to do push notifications if they haven't already. But that's a server that they have to run and a service that they have to run in order to, you know where your server is at and be able to send push notifications to the phone app. So they have an iOS app and an Android app, and you can set that to point to your own server. And then when you send messages to people, it'll send a push notification to let them know they got a message, even though it's from your server and through your server, which I think is awesome. But I understand it. There's a lot of overhead, and as you get more and more and more people using RocketChat, there's more and more and more overhead So for them, I understand wanting to charge a small fee to kind of recoup some of that cost, and again, that keeps them able to continue building on this particular platform. So I think it's cool. But if you want this, you need to say, yes, I want to do register access. If you say I want to keep it standalone, then they're telling you, here's the things you're going to have to do if you don't register this thing. And then you agree to their terms and just hit continue. And it says your workspace is ready to use, and here's how you're going to reach it. And you can say go to your workspace. It's going to try to point you to that space, and it wants to know what my username is. So I'm going to say MIC in TX, since that's kind of the one that I use for everything where I interact with you guys. And then you come to the home. So this is home, which is great. It gives you a little bit of information, and then you've already got a general channel set up. So if you click on general, you can kind of see the initial, hey, you joined this channel. And if I type in a message, it says I'm here. There you go. You see it. It says I'm here. Now, this isn't super exciting because I'm by myself. I don't want to be in here by myself. You guys like to reach out to me, and I have a lot of different ways for you to do that. So I'm going to set this up so that it'll actually be set up for open source. Is awesome. So before we do that, I've got a few things I want to go through on the settings. So if you click on this little 3 dots, you can click on administration. It's going to take you into the settings, and you can see a lot of information about your actual server here. So I'm going to go down, and there's import, so you can import from other systems. If you want to switch to RocketChat, there's users, so you can go in and set up users. You can invite users. They can just create their own accounts. But before they can really create accounts, you need to come down and set up something else. So you're going to scroll way down here, just like I'm doing. And if you want to type to make it easier, you can. So I'm going to type in EMAI, and we have email right here. And when you click on email, you're going to see a lot of sections in here. We want to move down here to the SMTP section. So you can set this to be something else, but I'm going to leave it at SMTP, and I'm going to say that my host, and I'm going to fill in my information, and my port is 587, and I'm going to tell it not to ignore TLS because my system uses TLS. And then pool, I honestly don't know if I need that, but I'm going to turn it off. So username is my email, and password, I have to go and actually get my password and paste it in there, so give me just a second. And then the from email, so in this case I'm just going to make it from me. And then you have to save. I'm sorry, I forgot. So the save button's up here. It's kind of an odd flow. You change all these things. You need to save. Don't remember if I need pool or not, to be honest. We'll leave pool on. Let's see what happens. We can test it. So I'm going to save the changes, and then you can see send a test email. So I'm going to send a test email, and it's going to try to send out an email to me. And I'll switch back over to my other browser window, and I'll go open up my email. And there it is. There's my SMTP test email, so you can see that I've actually gotten the email, and I can say allow the content, and it's going to say RocketChat. So it says you successfully sent a test email. So we've set up the first part that we need to set up, which is great. Now, if you don't have your own web server, or if you're using like Gmail, Gmail has a whole bunch of weird stuff you have to do to be able to send emails through their SMTP server, so you need to familiarize yourself with that. But if you're running your own mail server, if you're with somebody who you can use their mail server, then this is the way to do it. And you really need to set this up before other people try to register, because the system sends in a registration email for them to verify who they are. So email's done. That's awesome. So now we can get rid of that and unfilter everything. There's a few other things down here that you might want to check out and actually set up. So when we start talking about these actual settings, we want to get down here and actually set up some settings that make the system work better. So we're going to get to the settings here in just a minute, but first I want to go set up an actual URL for my site. And the way that we do that is we actually go over here to our site and over to our server, and in this case I have NGinX Proxy Manager running, and I'm going to create basically a URL for this server. So this server is going to be a little bit of a special URL because it's not going to want to point to where we want it to, but it's not going to be hard. So I'm going to add a host, and I'm going to call this, so let me do this. I'm going to set it up a little bit different way. So I own routemehome.org, and I have an asterisk, I have a wildcard DNS entry, so I'm going to do chat.routemehome.org. Now you don't have to remember this particular URL, but I'm going to point to my actual IP address. So I'm going to go to Portainer, and I'm going to go to my RocketChat app, and I'm going to look at the actual details here. And I'm going to go down here and look at the gateway address, which is 29.0.1. So I'm going to put that in on my NGinX proxy manager. So 172.29.0.1, and then I'm going to put port 9201. I'm going to say block common exploits and WebSocket support so that we can get WebSocket stuff going. I'm just going to hit save so that I get a non-SSL URL first. And I'm going to test it real quick to make sure that it works. And here we go. It's loading up. Let's make sure that I can log in. And it works, and it tells me that my registration is still pending, which is fine. Now we've got our URL set up, we're going to go and set up SSL. So I'm going to hit Edit. I'm going to jump over to the SSL tab. I'm going to say I want to request a new SSL certificate. I'm going to say Force SSL, and then I'm going to set up HSTS. So I'm going to enable this. And then I'm going to make sure my email address is in here, and I'm going to agree. And I'm going to hit Save. This is going to go out and ask, let's encrypt to challenge my site, make sure it can reach it on port 80, and if it can, it should just go away with no error message. And now we can click on it, and we should go to an HTTPS site, which is what we want. So that's great. Now we're getting there from HTTPS, which is awesome, so I can close out this HTTP site, and I can log in. Now let's see if my username works. It doesn't like that one. Let's try Mick in Texas. There we go, it likes that one. Okay, now we're not going to save it. So again, I'm sure. So this is telling me that it's still registering my site, so that's fine, no big deal. And we're going to just close this window for now, or close that little browser thing. We're going to go back into administration. So now we can finish up some settings and things like that. So we're going to come down to the bottom and click on Web RTC. And we're just going to enable for public channels, we're going to enable it for private channels, and we're going to enable it for direct messages. It's going to have Google Stun servers in here by default. I don't really like Google servers that much. I mean, honestly, for what we're going to be doing, it's fine. I can change them at some point if I want to, but for now we're just going to set these so that they're turned on so that WebRTC can be used with our chat channels. And we're going to hit save, and that part's done. Now if we scroll back up, we're going to look at video conference. And under video conference, you're going to see you have options for Big Blue Button, and you have options for Jitsi Meet. Now for Jitsi Meet, by default, it sets up meet.jit.si, which is the main Jitsi Meet website. So when you want to do a video or audio conference in RocketChat, basically when you click to say, hey, I want to call somebody, or I want to do a screen, a camera share with somebody, that goes out and says, hey Jitsi, we're going to create a room real quick, and it's going to invite both people, and they're going to join and do the video chat through Jitsi. Now this is great. If you don't have your own Jitsi server, this is awesome. I love Jitsi. These guys provide this service completely for free. It's open source software. You can run it if you want to, but you can use their servers for free, and they've basically got a company that backs that for them, that owns other things that they make money from, which is pretty awesome. So there's a company that pays for that, which is great. But if you want to use your own Jitsi server, you can. So I'm just going to go in and enable this, and we're going to let it create a meet.jit.si room. If anybody wants to meet and have a video or audio conference, they can do that. Now you can actually set up your URL room suffix, which is kind of cool. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to let it generate a random number of a random room name, basically. But I think it's pretty awesome that you can do that as well. So there's a few options here that you can read through and check out for setting up Jitsi rooms, which is cool. Now you want to set it up to enable in channels, in my opinion. If you don't enable it in the channels, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have this set up. And then always open in a new window. Yes, we can do that as well. All right, so once we've got that set up and everything enabled like I have here, you just go up here and click Save again to save your changes. And it should give you a little message that says that they've been saved. There are tons and tons and tons of settings that you can set, not only for yourself and your user and your users, but for the system overall within RocketChat. I can't go through them all tonight, but I highly recommend that you go through here and click through them and just read about what they are and check them out. Their documentation is tremendous, and I think it's really cool. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.